Assalamualaikum and a very good morning, guys. So today, my partner Nur Hafika and me, Nur Shahira, will be presenting on a very interesting topic, that is the Israel and Palestine conflict. Before we start our presentation, we would like to put a disclaimer that this conflict is a rather complicated issue, and it is impossible for us to put all of these events that happened in the duration of almost a century in our 20 minutes plus oral presentation. So we will just be explaining about some basic and stuff that we find important, and other detailed stuff that you will need to read it by yourself. Okay, now without further ado, let's start our presentation. So this is our table of content. We will start our presentation by explaining the background of the area that involved in the conflict, because the conflict is mainly about a fight regarding a certain territory, and then follows by the causes of this conflict, leading to the consequences of this conflict, and then we will also be looking into a dual perspective analysis from the views of Palestinian and Israelis. And then we will move forward to look at what happened in Palestine today, and finally we will come into a conclusion. Okay, first thing first, the background. In this part, I will be explaining about the geographical location and historical background of the state territories, that is the Israel and Palestine state today. Yeah, so this is basically what Israel and Palestine looks like in 2020. So you can see that Israel and Palestine is located at the Eastern Mediterranean area, beside the Mediterranean Sea. And this grayish-brownish area is the state of Israel, that was founded at 1948, while the green part is the state of Palestine, that was established in 1988. Let's turn back time and look what does this area looks like before the conflict started. Before the end of the World War I, Palestine area was under the governance of the Ottoman Empire. But as you can see here, it wasn't a singular territorial entity without a single political unit, but rather it was a combination of Fuz Sanjak and Wilayat of the Ottoman Empire. According to the Ottoman record, dated back in 1878, this area was mostly inhabited by the Arab Muslim, with 87% of the total population, with small community of Christian and Jews with 9% and 3% of population respectively. So this area or territory was inhabited by various ethnic and races lived together harmoniously before the conflict. An Israeli historian even said that Jews lived there and treated like a local. So what went wrong? This leads us to the causes or reason why this conflict happened. The causes will touch the religious, social, and political reasons. The first cause is the Jewish migration to Jerusalem. By the 19th century, there was an explosion of an ideology in the Europe. This idea is the idea of nationalism. It was spread widely and very popular there. So even the Jews was accustomed with this idea, especially the Zionists. They think that Jewish is not just a religion, but a nationality. Hence, they believe that the Jews deserve to build a state of their own. And the Zionists, they think that the best place to build their new state is on the historic homeland of the ancient Jews. Furthermore, there was an anti-Semitism that happened in Europe, which caused a Holocaust, or the Shoah, which is the genocide of the Jewish population in Europe. And this was done during the World War II by the German Nazi under the leadership of Adolf Hitler. Hitler was one of the very anti-Semitic person. And this was a quote by Theodor Herzl, which say that the aim of the Zionists was to find a national home for the Jewish people secured by public law. Okay, the second causes is due to the conflict of interest. As I said before, Israeli, they need to find a land to establish its state. And the Jewish, they claim that the lands are theirs. The Palestinian lands are theirs, based on the biblical promise to Abraham and his descendant. So this it looks like Palestine was built on the site of ancient Jewish kingdom of Israel. But the Palestinian Arab, they claims that the ownership of the land are based on continuous residence in the country, especially the Ottoman Empire has governed that area for hundreds of years. Thus, the Muslim Arab, they represent the majority of the demographic in that area. Another issue is the issue of authority over Jerusalem. As we all know, Jerusalem was a holy site for both Judaism and Islam. The third cause is the foreign intervention. After the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in World War II, the Middle East was divided by the French and British, and the territories of Palestine was brought under British mandate system. It is important to note that even before the war ended, British had issued the Balfour Declaration, which promised the Jews some lands in Palestine. So, after Palestine has become the British mandatory state, the British allowed Jewish migration into Palestine. But as the number of the Israelis increased in the land of Palestine, the Palestinian obviously doesn't like this. That is the start of this conflict. As the conflict intensified, British gave up their mandates over Palestine and handed over the problem to the United Nations. The UN then issued the partition plan, which will be the main base of the two states border until now. So this is the Balfour Declaration. We can see here that the declaration mentioned the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Now let's look at the consequences. The first consequences is obviously the division of land between Palestine and Israel. In 1946, as you can see from the map number 1, Israelis already bought some lands at the Palestinian land. And the map 2 shows the division of the territory according to the UN partition plan. I think that anybody who's in the right mind will think that this map won't work. Why is it that? Because the land was divided like a jigsaw puzzle. And it was just not strategic in my opinion. Just imagine that you live surrounded by your enemy or the people that you feel hostile towards to. Yeah, of course, will lead to aggression and wars and rebellion and resistance. And that was what happened there. The Palestinian doesn't like the UN plan and start a war, civil war with the Israelis. And a series of war happened, but of course, as we all know, Israel won. I mean, let's just look at this, the third map. You can see who won from the wars. Several Palestinian land vanished and absorbed into becoming Israel territory. The fourth map is the current map, with Israel occupying the Palestinian land, especially the West Bank. In addition, the current US president and the president before him was very pro-Israel. And this is some of his tweets that shows his support to Israel. But I want to highlight this one tweet of his about the future state of Palestine, because he proposed this plan or map early this year, and this is what the map he proposed looks like. So let's see. Of course, the Palestinian was at the disadvantage again, and their land was further apart from each other and was only connected by bridges and tunnels. So to cross this bridge and tunnel, they will need Israel's approval. Next consequences, which is the obvious, the decades of wars and resistance. It started at 1947, following the UN partition plan, a war called the Nakba. In Arabic, it means the catastrophe, while for the Israel, it means the War of Independence. And also, Israel witnessed some major resistance from the Palestinian to the first Intifada and the founding of Hamas, and also the second Intifada by the year 2000. So all of these wars and resistance brought a heavy toll to the civilians, be it the Israelis or Palestinians. It brought destruction of facilities, of course high number of casualties, and obviously the expansion of Israel's territory, while Israel also made some peace treaty with Arab countries. The Arabs, they decided to be friends, or at least in a trade term with Israel for some cases. And the most devastating thing is the Palestinians became refugees. During the Nakba alone, there were 700,000 Palestinians that became refugees, and many more became refugees during the occupations. Okay, for the next consequences, it will be explained by my partner. So I pass the mic to you, Afika.
Hi and morning to doctor and fellow classmates. My name is Nur Hafika and I will continue our presentation with the next two consequences of this conflict, with the third one being the national instability of Palestine. So the first reason for national instability to occur in Palestine was because the conflict has immensely affected Palestine's GDP, or gross domestic product, in a bad way. For information, in case some of us might not know, Palestine is famous for its agricultural sector, especially in the making of olive oil and vegetables such as eggplant and tomatoes, to name a few. Therefore, Palestine used to informally employ 90% of its population under this sector, which obviously portrayed the huge percentage that this sector holds in Palestine's GDP. But this was before the establishment of the West Bank barrier, since after Israel built that wall, most of Palestinians can no longer cultivate their farms or their lands because most of it has been confiscated in order to build the wall. And also many infrastructure has been destroyed to make way for the barrier. For example, their barn and water resources. So without land and water, how can they cultivate their crops, right? And the third significant aspect that undermines Palestine's GDP the most is because of the blockades of exportation at the West Bank barrier. Since Israel is one of Palestine's main export destinations, the restrictions at the barrier has a huge impact for Palestinians who work under the agricultural sector. Before this, they can freshly deliver their vegetables to sell at markets, but since the wall exists, they need to apply for permit, their truck need to pass the eligibility, they need to follow curfew, so all of this is time consuming. Since they need to do this every single day, so naturally the vegetables will spoil and no longer in good condition for sale purposes. So in the end, it will all become waste, and that is the very reason that threatens the GDP of Palestine. Next reason for national instability in Palestine is because of the separation of its citizens under two governments. One is Hamas at Gaza and another one is Fatah at West Bank. So this separation, according to Fatah leader, is threatening the unity of Palestinians, especially in the long run. So we can imagine what if we are living in Gaza and we have friends in the West Bank, but we heard that our friends supported Israel's decision to block the medical and food supplies to us at Gaza. So obviously, it will create misunderstanding between both Palestinians when actually they are striving for the same goal, but the only difference is that they are living under authorities that opposes each other's ideology. Moving on to the final consequences of Israel-Palestine conflict, which is the negligence of citizens' welfare and social development. Again, as I've mentioned before, the many restrictions at West Bank barrier has reduced the freedom of Palestinians in continuing their daily life activities. Before this, villagers who live near the borders can easily get their things at markets in other villages, but due to the wall, some of Palestinians' communities have been isolated from the rest of West Bank area, making it difficult for them to even acquire basic stuff. Other than that, many Palestinians who work at Israel also opt to stay overnight at their workplace. Same goes to students. Instead of going back to their home after class ends, they have resorted in paying more money to stay at campus. Lastly, this conflict neglects the citizens' welfare because the establishment of the barrier resulted in lack of access to healthcare for Palestinians. One of it is the increase of time in emergency service to respond, especially at night, due to the curfew and restrictions at the barrier. According to Palestinian Red Crescent Society, the wall also prevented many Palestinian children to be immunized and denied medical services for pregnant women at hospitals that supposed to serve them. So next is the dual analysis perspective from us, but before I start with the explanation, let's take a look together at the video that we have compiled based on clips and documentary footages on what Israelis and Palestinians views about this conflict.
Welcome to Hebron. It's the first historic Jewish city. There are many Jewish livers here, and they're not settlers. We're not settling foreign land. This is our land.
Jewish history is very much a history of being an uprooted people. And the entire Zionist project was to create a place where we will not be uprooted again.
We were all educated that the army is holy. The army is holy as long as it carries out what it is meant to do, to defend the Israeli people and fight the Arab terrorists.
אבל אם אני מסתכל עליו גם בקנה המידה של המשפט שאני מכיר מישראל, אני תוהה על המרכיב של הצדק בעשיית הדין פה, וזאת משום שבית משפט, גם בית משפט צבאי, הוא המוסד שבו השלטון עושה צדק עם הפרט.
הוא עושה קודם כל סדר עם האדם שמתחת שליטתו ועם האוכלוסייה שמתחת שליטתו. לא תמיד הסדר והצדק הולכים שלובי זרוע.
Israel did not want to be dominating over other countries. It's not what Israel was about. It was not the political or the ideological aim of the country. But it found itself in this situation, and when it did try to have discussions with other countries about how to deal with this land, how to set up basically a two-state solution, basically a territory side by side, it was either met with lack of interest or with terror or with war.
אני רוצה לשאול על אספקט אחר שהעליתי קודם. הדין הבינלאומי נוקט עמדה ברורה כנגד העברת אוכלוסייה מהמדינה הכובשת אל השטח הכבוש. אני מקשה ושואל מדוע בג"ץ לא ראה בתופעה הזו משהו שהוא צריך לעמוד בפניו.
זאת שאלה לאחר מעשה, אינני יודע.
המדינה הכובשת שטח במלחמה, להעביר אל השטח הזה אזרחים שלה.
כשמדובר בהתנחלויות ישראליות, לא מדובר בהעברה של אוכלוסייה. העברה של אוכלוסייה נחשבת להעברה בכוח נגד הרצון, וכאן אנשים התנדבו לעבור לאזור הגדה המערבית מרצונם.
كتير توجعنا. نفسي أخرج من الواقع هذا، إنه نفرح، ننبسط، نحس إن عايشين، يعني مش إنه إحنا ميتين بالحياة، يعني ميتين. وبدي أشتغل طبعاً، يعني بدي حريتي، يعني صعب كتير هيك يعني.
It was a normal thing. It start being abnormal when they start building the wall. It start being, a sign of hatred, not a sign of living together.
Lost many of our beloved. We are just human asking for humanity. That's why we are protesting. Being a Palestinian, that means you have to pay a price. Just for being Palestinian, you are the enemy. If you are a child, a woman, elders, doesn't matter. That's why we began to let children participate the protest. We want to teach them a lesson that this is your land, this is your right, and you have to fight for these things.
This is what Hamas is renowned for. The reason why many Palestinians see them as defenders of their own people.
تمت المقاومة الصبح لما دخلوا الساعة 3 صباحا هي فاجأتهم، ضربتهم المقاومة وتم إصابة منهم 20 واحد بما فيهم القائد تبعهم مات. نعم، ورغم الطيارات تضرب الصبح جت الطائرات الهليكوبتر والزنانة هذه هي تضرب رصاص ترعب السكان وترعب الناس، لكن الناس صامدين وزي ما بتشوفوا بعيونك.
وفيش تحرير لفلسطين غير بتحرير الأسرى وعودة اللاجئين وتكون القدس عاصمة فلسطين الأبدية.
So based on the video, we can conclude that firstly, Israelis are in need of Jewish homeland that was promised to them by British before, and they fear that they will lose that privilege if they let Palestinian refugees return to Israel. But for Palestinians who are currently denied a state of their own, they just want to take what was once theirs, which is the right of return. Secondly, from Israelis' perspective, we can say that they are actually anxious of Hamas militants, so they do not want to make any decisions that could lose their security system, for example, by giving up the barrier at West Bank. So Israel's government believe that if they give up the barrier, Hamas will eventually take over the West Bank and Israelis will be in deeper grave concerns than they are currently having right now. But for Palestinians that support Hamas as a leader, especially in Gaza, the reason for that is because they are desperate for freedom and liberation, and they have witnessed Hamas militants protecting them from Israel's army's violence. Moving on to the next slide, what is currently happening at Palestine today. So, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has announced his plan to annex 30% of West Bank area, but up until today, 15 July, no action has been taken yet, which is because President Trump has yet to give a green light for Benjamin to do so, since the annexation is part of Trump's deal of the century plan. And of course, in case some of us might ask. It has been criticized and condemned by almost all countries, including many Jewish organizations and Israel's very own alternate Prime Minister, Benny Gantz. So this is some of the pictures that shows Israelis and Palestinians having rallies to protest against this annexation. So finally, to conclude our presentation, we can all agree that this decades conflict of Palestine and Israel requires an outside of the box approach, since they have tried various ways to achieve peace. One-state solution, two-state solution, peace talks, negotiations, and even multiple wars, but still peace seems to be out of their reach as of now. So according to a fellow of intelligence in Middle East affairs, one of the suggestions to end this conflict is to cast aside the concept of an Israeli-Palestinian agreement in favor of an Israeli-Arab agreement. By Israeli-Arab agreement, he meant that maybe other Arab countries can take part to solve this conflict, since Israel depends quite a lot on other Arab countries such as Egypt and Jordan, and then only they can proceed to create interim agreements to set the ground for final agreements, since it is impossible for both states to reach the final agreement in the near future. So, with that being said, our presentation has finally come to an end. Thank you so much to Dr. and fellow classmates for the time taken to watch our video, and hope we can all gain more insights on this topic. Thank you very much and have a good day, everyone.